You know, when you think of the word patience, what comes to mind? Probably waiting, right? Just passively waiting for something to pass. But what if I told you that patience could be an active spiritual power, a kind of determined resistance? Well, that's really the heart of the Islamic concept of sabr. And today, we're going to go deep, unpacking its true meaning and exploring the theological foundations that make sabr one of the most crucial virtues in the faith. So here's our plan. We'll start by redefining patience as an active struggle. Then we'll look at the 3 different arenas where sabr is tested. After that, we'll uncover a pretty surprising hierarchy among them. Then we'll see why it's so critical that it's actually called the head of faith. And finally, we'll talk about the ultimate promise for those who master it. All right, let's get right to the heart of it. Sabr is not just about gritting your teeth and bearing it. It's an active struggle, a kind of steadfastness that's driven by a really powerful and specific purpose. It's about taking a moment where you might feel helpless and turning it into a moment of profound spiritual strength. Now, this verse you're seeing here from the Qur'an, it's a total game changer. It describes people of understanding as those who are patient, seeking the countenance of their Lord. And that phrase right there, seeking the countenance of their Lord, is everything. It completely reframes the act. This isn't just aimless endurance anymore. It's about enduring with the clear intention, the niyyah of pleasing God. This motivation is what transforms patience from a passive reaction into a proactive, conscious act of worship. It's all about sincerity. The struggle itself becomes an offering. So, what is sabr, really? Well, the key words in this definition are steadfastness and resistance. The Arabic root of the word literally means to confine or restrain. But look at what's being restrained. It's not just about holding back tears or frustration when things get tough. It's also about the restraint you need to keep doing your duties when you just don't feel like it, and the even greater restraint needed to stop yourself from doing wrong when you're tempted. You can think of it like a 3-part spiritual muscle, constantly flexing against different kinds of resistance. And that brings us to a really crucial idea. Sabr isn't just one single thing. It's practiced and tested in 3 totally distinct areas of our lives. Each one requires a different use of that spiritual muscle we were just talking about. Okay, so first you have patience in the face of calamity. This is the one we all think of, getting through loss, sickness, or injustice. The classic example is the prophet Ayub, or Job, who lost almost everything but never his faith. Second, there's patience in obedience. This is the discipline to do what you're supposed to do day after day. You know, like waking up for the dawn prayer when it's cold and you're comfortable, or fasting for a whole month. It's a long, quiet marathon of just being consistent. And third, and this is a huge one, is patience in refraining from sin. This is the active fight against your own inner temptations and desires. The perfect example here is the prophet Yusuf, or Joseph, who resisted incredible temptation, choosing God over his own desires. So this brings up a really fascinating question. Are all these types of sabr equal? Or is there maybe a hierarchy where some forms are considered more challenging and because of that, maybe more virtuous than others? So let's think about this for a second. You have patience with things that happen to you, things you can't control. You have patience with the duties you have to do. And you have patience against your own internal desires. Which one of those do you think is the toughest? Which one holds the most virtue? Well, it turns out there is a hierarchy. Patience with calamity is foundational, right? Everyone faces hardship. It's often a reaction to something. But patience in obedience, that's seen as more virtuous because it requires you to be proactive. You have to initiate the action consistently. And then at the very top is patience against sin. So why is that? Because it's a constant internal battle. It's not about enduring something that happens to you from the outside. It's about winning a continuous war inside yourself. And that makes it the most difficult and therefore the most rewarding struggle of all. Okay, so now that we understand the different layers of sabr, let's talk about just how essential it really is. There's this incredibly powerful analogy in the Islamic tradition that leaves no doubt about its central role in a person's faith. Just think about that for a moment. Patience is to faith as the head is to the body. This isn't saying it's just a nice-to-have virtue. It's saying it's the command center. The head is where our reason, our senses, our ability to direct our body comes from. Without the head, the body is lifeless. Well, this teaching says the exact same thing is true for faith without sabr. Faith without the ability to patiently endure, patiently obey, and patiently resist temptation It just becomes unstable. It can't survive the tests of life. Sabr is what gives faith its structure, its direction, and its ability to function. So after all this struggle, this active, multi-layered, absolutely essential practice of steadfastness, what's the outcome? Well, the sources are crystal clear about the ultimate promise for those who truly embody Sabr, and its reward so immense it's sometimes described as being given without account. The rewards are just profound. First, imagine being greeted by angels with the word peace as you enter paradise. It's a direct acknowledgement of your struggle. Second, of course, is entry into paradise itself, called the excellent home. And then there's this beautiful act of divine mercy. Your reward isn't based on your average actions, but on the absolute best of what you did. It's a recognition of your highest spiritual moments. In fact, another verse in the Qur'an says, the patient will be given their reward without any measure at all, signifying it's just boundless. And we end with this powerful verse that brings it all home. Peace be upon you for what you patiently endured. You see how direct that link is? The reward of peace is explicitly tied to the struggle of patience. Sabr isn't framed as some heavy burden we have to carry. It's presented as the very price of admission to an eternal, unbreakable peace. And it kind of leaves us with a question, doesn't it? How can we start to see our own challenges, whether it's a calamity, the daily grind of our duties, or the pull of temptation, not as obstacles, but as chances to practice this active, powerful, and ultimately liberating form of patience?